Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here. Wow, it's really bright.
It's very bright, yes, yes. And if you're too cold, don't worry. These lights will sort that out for you. Yes. So you're the Senior Program Manager for the Google Accelerator Europe. What exactly is that?
Yes, the Google for Startups Accelerator is an acceleration program for startups. It's a global program, and we are boiled down into the different regions. So I'm overlooking Europe, together with my colleague who's based in the UK. And it's a 10 to 12 weeks program where we really try to bring the best people to the startups, the best technologies, obviously also Google experts and industry experts. We have a huge pool of mentors that have been with us for years, like up to 12 years, some of them. And it's a program we run hybridly. So we have in-person events at the beginning, at the end, usually. We try to bring them to beneficial industry events, like for instance last week we went to Viva Tech and London Tech Week, quite important startup conferences. And if you are aware, also in Helsinki is Slush every year in November, the only reason why people would go to Helsinki in November. They even use that as a slogan. So yeah, this is kind of what we're doing, and we try to really like bring workshops to the startups, but also let them really have one-to-one mentoring and really nurture themselves from the community that we've created from the alumni that are also have been part of the program in the past.
Yeah, okay, so it's very cool. And are you seeing more AI native and AI add-on startups?
Yes, absolutely. So we've even also kind of pivoted to the way that we have been running a lot more AI-related programs. So the one I've closed just last week was AI First, which is AI companies where the AI solution, or they work with the AI solution, is really the core of the business, which is different than the AI add-on companies you've been referring to. But since AI is such a big hype, people try to really jump on that wagon for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, but what happens? You just see them coming, you're just like, no, doesn't count.
I mean, we have obviously usually like a theme. So AI First is very industry non-specific. There could be health tech. There could be like we had one amazing company that is reinventing building structures and how they kind of create the materials with AI. So that's also funky. But then there's also stuff like interviewing AI agents. So you can practice challenging conversations instead of doing it just by yourself.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Quite like that. And what's the biggest shift you've seen now with how startups are pitching since Gen AI specifically?
I think the great thing about startups also being more in the AI sphere is there is a lot of more people also being present that are very technical, okay? So the good thing is they are now also on the stages, because it tends to be usually more business oriented. Like CEOs are getting to the front, being pushed and like having all those conversations. But when your core business is AI, the CEO can't just be fluffy, right? So you have to really also understand your business and the things you're doing. So I've been seeing a lot more really technical conversations, which is, I think, very great and refreshing, and steps away from the fact that it's tends to be a very fluffy business sometimes as a founder and how you present yourself.
Yeah, win for the nerds. Who would have thought that, Now, there are some projects are essentially just wrapping ChatGPT, and they provide some prompts, and maybe they've built a specific UI or something. Would that make it onto the Accelerator program?
So the Accelerator program, maybe also to be clarified, is equity free. So we don't take equity. We are also not necessarily investing like Google Ventures, but we make sure you get to speak to VCs and investors and angel investors from our network, from the wider network. And I think it really also depends. You need to be unique. It's been a very flooded market, and because it is such a hype, people try to sell you things even though they might actually not really been proven yet, just to make it on the page where you're like, I am on the AI hype. So I think there's a lot of companies now that tried with the layer of having ChatGPT in the background just doing things, but I think it makes you not very unique, and usually that comes out once you have those conversations, because it's so technical and so dynamic. People ask usually quite probing questions, and that's when you tend to expose yourself, I suppose.
Oh yeah. I wonder if you could actually get an AI to do that, just to check. That could be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are non-technical founders navigating AI product development? Do they get what this is? Do they just imagine this is like, you can just ask anything, it just does anything? What's the...
I think that's what I meant. It's like they have to become also more technical. They have to have a strong counterpart, but ideally they are also part of this. The flip side of them being all very technical is that sometimes they forget the business side of things. So funnily enough, with a lot of the AI classes, they are having a hard time pitching to different audiences. No problem at all to technical audiences at all. But when it becomes more broader, that's when they are like having a hard time to simplify what it is, to open the conversation in a different way. And that's sometimes quite important, because like some of the VCs are not only AI VC related, they are on a broader scale and they look more into what round you are in. So you need to have that balance, and that can be quite challenging sometimes. Another aspect is, funnily enough, company culture, okay? Because everyone is quite deep in the tech field. They are really like also on top of things, constant like workshops and like trying to evolve the skill set, the data, But then they forget about stuff that is like more on the fluffy side, let's say, like company culture, personal development, how to hire people, how to manage remotely. So we've been seeing, funnily enough, in those really technical programs, a lot of holistic topics more bubbling up rather than the technical ones.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's funny that they talk about that stuff so early, because obviously it's just new for them, right?
Yes, it is new, but like at the same time, it's always a fight for talent. I feel, especially because AI is so big now, and there has been people that have been in the AI field for such a long time, but also there's so many people coming into it now because it's like the bet to go for, and it's hard, especially in the startup scene, and maybe we can also check if we have startups or founders here. Sometimes the growth is so exponential and so fast, and the challenge of the leadership and the challenge of like the team quality comes out when it's under pressure and it's growing fast.
Yeah.
Do we have founders or startups here? Okay.
Yeah. Let's go and find out a little bit about what we've got going on down here. Are you a founder, or are you part of a startup now that is AI first or AI augmented? Yes. What's your name and what is the startup you're doing?
Yeah. Hi. My name is Goran, and I come from Norway, and part of a startup which is developing medical device software. It's basically an AI analyzing digital pathology, histology images and producing the outcome, or output is the outcome prediction for the survival rate of the colorectal cancer patients. So yeah, it's a quite interesting product.
Great. Yeah, we've seen a lot of AI really influence in health tech. It's really amazing what you can do, because the data and the predictability of things becomes so much more reliable than relying only on the doctor to identify things. We actually also had a cancer-related startup from Denmark with us for the last class. So, yeah.
But that's where we really have to care about it hallucinating, right? This really matters.
I mean, this is not the Gen AI, so it's basically a CNN in story, but it's an interesting use case because it's covering something that we weren't able to do before. The pathologists weren't able to look at the tissue sample and predict the chance of survival. So this is something that AI does wonderfully. But in the whole digital pathology, there's like a million use cases that we can do now. For example, count the number of single cells in this tissue sample, where you might have 200,000 cells. So yeah, a lot of really interesting use cases there for the AI.
So many possibilities. I think it's so great. And one of the challenges with health tech, but in general with AI, is finding the balance between moving fast and staying maybe responsible, also handling all the policy-related curveballs, because politics are not, or trying to keep up, but they have such a delayed response rate, and I think that's something you probably have to deal with a lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, complying with all the regulations, it's very difficult, and MDR, for example, is very challenging here in Europe. But all of those regulations are difficult for a reason. I mean, the focus is patient safety is #1, and it should always be. So, yeah.
Great, thanks for sharing. So cool.
Yeah, but maybe you could have like a YOLO version where you just do it, do whatever you want, and that's the best way for the AI to learn, isn't it? YOLO is perhaps not the best term I could have chosen there. Oh, what's happening? Jeff, you also put your hand up. Did you?
I did, but I can't talk about anything that we're doing with AI, so.
Oh, cool, it's top secret. Good one, Jeff. Anybody else, any part of a startup or doing or thinking about one?
I was going to say, or maybe planning to do one.
Yes, now's your time to pitch. How about AI as a best friend? So you can have a best friend.
I think Japan has a better solution. You can just brand people that are real to be your best friend for a day. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so what trends are you seeing in what investors are actually looking for? What do investors want out of this?
I think investors are usually very much interested in being somewhere the first. So they look for something that is solid. So especially health tech, the challenge can be it takes a while to land fully in the market. You have clinical trials that you need to do. Ideally, you back yourself with medical research and like proof of concepts and that makes it, I don't want to call it more risky, because the outcome, if it lands, can be so truly impactful and big. But we've seen in the last year, and I think we're all aware of the economical changes and challenges, that people try to go for the safe bet, whatever that might be. A lot of trends I see when it comes to applications for the Accelerator programs, for instance, is AI usage is big in health tech, but also in everything around hiring. So either it could be training, it could be helping you hire people very fast. There's a huge amount of AI-related startups in the hiring and HR tech sector. It's quite impressive and a lot.
Yeah, I can see how LLMs in particular would be able to help in that space for sure. Tell us, what is the weirdest AI startup that you've encountered so far?
I've seen one, and maybe, are you into drinking protein?
Yeah.
Sporty people as well. I see a hand. Okay. Maybe you have heard of them. They use basically AI, but also technical research based on human mother milk to create a protein shake that is working the best way for you. So the AI is helping with the individualization of the mixture, but it's based on human breast milk. I found it a little bit weird, I would say. I'm not sure if I would want to drink, even if it's not a real human, but it felt like, we were in Berlin, it felt like a kink.
Right.
I don't know. But obviously they claim human breast milk is the best thing to have. That's what babies want to drink first and really grow with. So that's kind of the base of the pitch.
That's why babies are all ripped.
Yeah.
But you know, we do have like fake meat and things, don't we? And we've got like pork, they do fake beef and chicken and stuff. It's fake, so why can't we have human flesh burger?
Yeah, wow, yeah.
Right?
I never thought of that. Maybe it's cheaper to produce, than trying to make it more beefy. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Instead of
Would be the test or Hannibal.
Instead of fish fingers, though, you could just have fingers. I'm trying to pitch ideas. If you could stop laughing, please. It's not helping.
Take it seriously.
Not a good sign when you're pitching an idea and people are laughing in the room. Take it seriously. Okay, so how often do you hear the phrase, we're like X, but with AI?
A lot. And I think it's a combination of two things. One is trying to make it easier for people to understand. But also, secondly, it can be such a demeaning thing because you're just literally highlighting your competition and just and on top is a little bit. I think it's rough because it will make people think about your competitor. You literally just said it. Where is your unique USP? So you can start the conversation to have an easier entry, and especially if it's someone who's very well established that you compare yourself to, but it can be also negative, and backfire. I think it ends up really being crucial about how you continue the conversation, and you need to know your USP. I think that's quite critical to have. If you don't know how to make yourself stand out, maybe these ideas exist, and then that's going to be challenging because there will be a fight for a competitive market and a lot of other challenges coming at you, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense if it's like X, but for a completely different domain, right?
That, I think, is a lot better, exactly, because you kind of give the comparison, but it's not in your market. It's not the competition itself. It makes people just easier to understand what you're trying to explain. So, yeah, very good example.
Like Uber for cats. I mean, like you could hire a cat to have round at your house for a bit.
Oh. A lot of cat cafes also in Berlin these days, by the way.
Yeah, I've seen them. They look great. How is AI changing team composition in the early stages of startups?
I think it's pretty cool because we had last week another example of this actually at our demo day in Paris. There's a seed startup. They only have currently 7 people on the team, and they said it was incredible after the program to understand that they can start with a lot of things earlier than they thought they would, because it made them a lot more efficient, and which gives them an advantage also in showing their proof of concept, going to the market earlier, for instance, opening up and rolling out new markets. They had in mind the traditional way of, we need at least this amount of people with X amount of people in the, for instance, the development parts of our organization, while now it's like 2 people handling it all, just because of how they set themselves up and getting some guidance from some of the technical mentors, for instance, to make it some tweaks and be more efficient. And they're really shocked. They're like, we turned around from going to market from like 2 to 3 months in like within a month, less than a month, like 10 to 12 days. That's wild, I think, because that will show you as well you can make more things happen in a shorter amount of time with a lot less people than you think you would.
Yeah, and you start to unlock that product market fit feedback and things. Which
I think makes acceleration even more, more peak, more faster, earlier, which is, I think, it's a very, exciting time to be in the startup ecosystem and watch what so few people can do. It's quite crazy in a good way.
Yeah, how about Uber for shoes? So you don't need to own your own shoes. If you want to go outside, you just order some shoes, someone brings them to you. How about that?
What about smelly shoes? I don't know.
What about smelly Uber cars?
That's very true.
Some of them stink.
Yeah, that's very true. You seem to be a fan of Uber.
Well, I'm just thinking like Uber, but for different things.
Yeah, fair enough.
It could be like Just Eat, but for shoes. No?
Try something else. The cat idea was better.
Okay, like Just Eat for cats.
Yeah.
What mistakes do teams make when they try to just like AI everything? Or what other mistakes do you see that are common that people could avoid?
I think one of the main first questions you should ask yourself when you come up with an idea is AI actually necessary? I think everyone just wants to be there and wants to do things, but it's not necessarily the right decision for your idea or solution. Just to be there. You would highly likely want to go for the solution to make it the best way, to highlight yourself. And sometimes AI is not necessary for that. It will also be more competitive for random reasons. So I think it's really question number one, is AI the solution for your solution? If it is, try to aim for having your own ideas as well. Because if it's only an add-on versus you have your own actual data, you run your own models, you have your own agents, that makes you unique. You have a different solution. Whereas if you just piggyback on a lot of other things, it will make you easier to be attacked on the competitive market, I would say. But yeah, really think about if AI is actually necessary or not.
So what do you think about Cursor as an example? Do you know Cursor, the integrated IDE? It essentially has LLMs in the background. It's just integrated into the code. And they've given it some tools like it can read the code and it can suggest changes and things. You could say that's just a wrapper on these LLMs, but they got to like 500 million ARR already. And in record time, I think.
Which is great. And I think with some of these solutions, you just need to be the first one to do it. And then you need to have really a good model of how you actually make it to money. Because a lot of other solutions end up being for free. And then you have maybe an add-on subscription. But especially with so many other tools popping up, there will be tools that might work very differently or are free or are piggybacking on a bigger company. I think you need to have like short-term goals like, yes, make it the first, get yourself established in the market, have a share, but what's next? What's the long-term kind of goal there?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think for engineers and for product people building these products, there is something about, we're tempted to, we sometimes want to make it perfect. We think about code a lot, and sometimes that can hurt us. What do you think? Like, should you kind of rush the first version and iterate after, or do you think it's worth getting it right first time?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we've had also a lot of cases where the startups started to highlight that sometimes overthinking it is not great. It just depends on how you roll it out. You might roll it out in waves to certain audience groups first, but then you get real data back and feedback, and that's something that's so crucial sometimes to like improve it down the line. Whereas if you end up waiting and always kind of like trying to perfectionize it, you might never end up, entering the market or like rolling out. And then there's already other things going on. Because of it being so dynamic and so many things happening all the time, I think you need to find a balance clearly and just don't like ship everything straight away, 100%. But there's a balance in when you should be doing that and also aiming for getting feedback. Do we agree? What's the thought here?
Yeah, do we agree with that? So let's actually talk about that a little bit. Anyone want to say anything about that? The other thing is, do we have any questions that we would like to ask Pati? Before we do that, Marco, do you like to take your time and get it right? Or will you do like a quick version and get that out and then iterate from there? What's your style?
The answer is yes, because I aim for during development, you know what the happy path of your product should be. And this one has to be as close as perfect as it can. And while you do figure out how this works, you get ideas of what can go wrong. And everything that comes to your mind should not go wrong at that point. But it doesn't matter if you have the test thing for 1 week and figure stuff out and don't find anything, or you waste months on it and it's getting more time until you find less crucial things. The customer will find things you never thought of. So as soon as you have been, the happy path works and all the unlucky paths I can't imagine with white box or whatever, because I know how it should work, and this thing is done, just give it to the user and say like, it's a preview idea, and have a look, figure it out, and then they come back and then you can iterate.
Yeah, let them, work in your favor, give you feedback, and they are usually, you should try to use all the heavy users you have. They will find everything, for sure, and they will be excited once they influence the actual outcome of the product. I think it is kind of a good win situation there, so cool.
Yeah, and you make a good point about the happy path. Another way to put that is, pick the scope, get the scope so it's really narrow and focused, then you can really do a good job on that. If you try and do too much, you have to kind of do a thin job on everything and then you're never quite getting it right. But
sounds like life.
yeah, doesn't it? Do we have any other questions for Pati? Oh yes, we do. Jessica Green over here, confusingly wearing blue.
I like to keep you on your toes, Matt. Thank you, Pati, for a really interesting, insightful discussion there. My question would be, how do you see AI maybe, or like this new wave of technology influencing who's getting money? So you kind of mentioned that it maybe means smaller teams, but is it also changing the kind of profiles that we see leading these startups?
That's such a good question. I still believe we still have the same challenges sometimes that have been existed in the past, like the sad reality is female-founded startups will get on average less money. It still is what it is. I do not see it changing. However, I think there's a general more push for just making sure that representation is there, and you give people with smaller teams get more opportunities. I think that, not necessarily straightforward more money, but that could come along, because you get more exposure and visibility. And if you really use those opportunities, you can translate that into the funding, for instance. I've seen that happening more. People are really interested in the solutions, not so much who's running the show, because of the need for a lot of good inventions and new ideas, I think, if that answers your question. Cool.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Pati before we wrap up? Yes. Okay. Vladimir, right?
Yes, correct. Maybe a question from a complete newbie, but I think the most important for a startup to show, like, financially how big is the return. So meaning that you need to provide a business plan first. And my question actually, if you can give some hints regarding this point, if business plan is mandatory or not. And secondly, do you have any framework? How do you verify this business plan? Because perhaps someone will write that amazing numbers, but is it like a human review? Someone from the team is taking care of this, or you also use maybe some GenAI tools to give you some confidence? So what's written in this business plan with these numbers, confidence 100. This one is 50. That's my question.
Okay. Yes, you need a business plan, because ultimately the facts will give you the conversation, right? I think you also need to have a balance between the hard facts, the numbers that you're showing there, which is based on research and you understanding the market you want to enter with your solution, but also have a human component to it. And I think that's where the confidence situation comes in. If you don't believe in what you're doing and you believe that it's truly needed, it's a lack of product market fit. And that's something that a lot of startups, for instance, don't think about. They try to throw out things, but haven't even thought about, is there a market? Just because I think it's a necessary solution doesn't mean the market for it exists of people that would pay for it, you know? These are all the things you need to really look at when you're like building a startup, coming up with an idea. And then maybe one side note I've learned a lot is also catching interest. Like by sometimes throwing out very weird things that make people look up. I give you an example. We've had a startup in the past. They're working with NHS and with medical online drug distribution and redistribution. And that CEO tends to go on stage and says, I am a drug dealer. And that keeps people being like, what is she talking about? And then she can elaborate, but she has your interest and she definitely usually has your attention. And she stays on your mind. And that's something that is part of the business plan, but it needs to be there. It's a human connection that you have, not only being like, this is the market share we would aim for, this is so much X millions of we could achieve in the next 2 years. Yes, that's great to know, and you should know this, but the other component is harder to train, I suppose. So I hope that answered a little bit of your question.
Yeah, and your point as well about find that product market fit is another reason why it's worth quickly getting something useful out there. Because you'd be shocked. I've witnessed this as well myself. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this. But please give it up one more time for Pati, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.